Have you ever sat on a porch on a warm summer evening? You know, that space that's not quite inside, not quite out. It feels so familiar, right? But what if I told you that space holds a hidden story, a secret whispered in the very color of the paint above your head? Okay, let's get into it.
So picture that porch right at dusk. The light's getting low and the ceiling above you is painted this soft sky-like blue. It's gorgeous for sure, but for generations, especially in the American South and Appalachia, that color was so much more than just decoration. It was like a quiet spell, a line of defense.
And that color has a name, Haint blue. For some people today, yeah, it's just a pretty paint choice. But for others, it's a protective inheritance, a tradition brushed on by grandparents who believed the world was a little more crowded, a little more haunted than it looked. To really get what this color is all about, we have to unravel its hidden history. And what's so fascinating is that the story of this mountain tradition doesn't actually start in the mountains at all. Nope, it starts way down along the coast.
The origins of Haint blue trace directly back to the Gullah Geechee people. Now, these are the descendants of enslaved West and Central Africans who were forced to work on plantations in the coastal Lowcountry. And it was there that they brought their spiritual vocabulary and protective practices with them across the Atlantic, refusing to let these traditions be erased.
And this is where the different threads come together in a really powerful way. So you've got these pre-existing West and Central African beliefs that spirits often couldn't cross water. Then, in the colonial South, indigo becomes this massive cash crop that provided the very pigment that the Gullah Geechee people would then use on their homes, basically creating a form of spiritual protection, a watery barrier to keep unwanted spirits, or haints, from crossing the threshold. So you end up with two explanations for why this color works, and they're running side by side. On one hand, you have the spiritual belief. The watery blue color confuses spirits like haints or boo hags, so they can't get into the home. But there's also a really practical reason. Early paints often had lime mixed in, which is a natural insect repellent. Plus, a lot of people just notice that birds and bugs are way less likely to build nests against a ceiling that looks like the open sky. Okay, so how did this coastal tradition end up finding its way deep into the Appalachian Mountains? Well, it didn't just spread, it traveled. And as it moved inland, it started to blend with other cultures and other beliefs. And the reason it was adopted so easily is just fascinating. As this custom moved inland along rivers and wagon roads, it met the folk beliefs of Scots-Irish, German, and indigenous peoples who were already in Appalachia. And guess what? In many of those traditions, the color blue already meant protection and blessing. So when Haint blue showed up, it wasn't seen as something weird or new. It was a color that, to a lot of people, already meant safe. It just fit. So here's the thing. We've been talking about this as folklore, a charming superstition. But what if it's way more than that? What if this simple can of paints can actually be a powerful tool for uncovering your own family's history? All right, let's get practical. We're going to break down how you can actually turn these cultural details, these port superstitions, into real actionable clues for your own genealogy work. Okay, here are 5 powerful ways you can read your family's history right on the porch. First off, track the geography. When you see Haint blue pop up, that can be a huge hint about migration patterns. Second, dig into those family stories. Look for any mention of Haints or that blue paint. Third, connect those stories to official records, like land deeds. Fourth, use old photos as actual evidence. Look for when the paint color changes over time. And finally, and this is so important, if your research leads you to Gullah Geechee roots, you have to honor this tradition as the significant cultural practice it is. Now, this might all sound a bit theoretical, so let's look at a real-world case study. This is how these clues can unlock a hidden family story, turning a simple porch into a family archive. Our story starts with this photo, right here. It's Eastern Tennessee, late 1940s. A simple family portrait on their porch, but I want you to look closely at the ceiling. See how it's dark, weathered, completely unpainted? Remember that. Now let's jump forward 20 years. It is the exact same porch, but look at the difference. The family's bigger, the porch is full of life, and that ceiling is now a soft, milky Haint blue. So the big question is, what happened in those 20 years? Well, a granddaughter noticed this change in the photos and got curious. She remembered family stories about her great-grandmother being afraid of Haints, so she started digging.
Census records showed the great-grandmother was born in coastal South Carolina, the heart of the Low Country, and the timeline revealed that the blue ceiling was painted right after her own widowed mother moved in from the coast. And suddenly, it all clicked. That paint wasn't just paint. It was a visible trace of a Gullah Geechee influence belief, carried by one woman from the Low Country right into the mountains.
I mean, how powerful is that? This one tiny detail tells a much, much bigger story. It tells us about cultural survival, how African spiritual practices endured and adapted. It highlights the influence of women. The choices of women who are often totally invisible in formal records were made visible right there on the family home. And it defined that porch as a real threshold, a boundary protecting the community inside.
And this really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? We spend so much time looking for our ancestors in official documents and on gravestones. But this is a beautiful reminder that their history, their beliefs, and their love are also found in the quiet, everyday spaces where they just lived.
So the next time you see a porch with a pale blue ceiling, or maybe you're just looking through your own family photos, I really want you to think about this. It might not just be a design choice. It could be a story just waiting for you to uncover it, which really leaves you with a question to ponder. What stories are brushed across the ceilings of your family's past?